Good morning. This is Aisha Khalid, and this is today's Quiet Echo. He is one of my oldest patients, in just about every sense of the word. He came into this world before there was a radio in every house. And he came home from the Pacific in the autumn of 1945, a young man with the whole rest of his long life still laid out there in front of him. He is very nearly 100 years old now. And this week, when I asked him how he had been sleeping lately, he went quiet on me for a moment. And then he told me, very simply, some nights I am still over there. Today is the 15th of August. And 81 years ago, on this very day, on the far side of the world, the guns of the Second World War fell silent at last. Japan surrendered. The killing stopped. And in cities all across America, people poured out into the streets, and they wept, and they kissed perfect strangers, because the terrible thing which had swallowed up the whole wide world was finally over. It is one of the very great days of joy in the entire human record, and it has every right to be. But I sit, day after day, in an exam room. And an exam room will teach you something the calendar never does. A war ends on a date, but it does not end in a body. The men came home from those months, and their wounds came home right along with them. The visible ones took years to close, the shoulders, the knees, the hearing lost forever to the guns. And the invisible ones, the ones they had a gentler name for back in those days, they called it battle fatigue. Well, those took a great deal longer. And a few of them never fully closed at all, because we did not yet know, in those years, how to help a man carry what those men were carrying. And so too many of them carried it all alone. Of the more than 16 million Americans who served in the war, the government now projects only about 30,000 are still living this year. A small, quiet room of the very old, most of them past 100. And some of them, 81 years on, are still tending, in the private way of their whole generation, what they carried home. And I will tell you what has stayed with me most, sitting across from the old man. It is the aloneness of it. His whole generation was raised to carry the hard things silently, to square the shoulders and say nothing and never trouble another soul with it. They came home to a country wanting very badly and very understandably to simply celebrate and move on. And so a great many of them tended their deepest wounds entirely by themselves, for 50 and 60 and 70 years, in the dark, saying nothing. And here is the one true mercy I see now. We are, slowly, learning to do better. We are learning to let a person say the wound out loud, and to sit with them while they do, so nobody has to carry the heavy thing alone anymore. And I have come to believe not being alone with it is, all by itself, a very great part of the healing. Now, let me confess something to you. For the longest time, I quietly assumed a man who had survived some terrible thing 80 years ago was, surely, long since done with it. My exam room has taught me a great deal better. I have learned some wounds do not so much close as they are carried. And the real measure of a person's healing is not whether the wound ever disappears. It is whether a person learns to carry it with a little help and goes on to live a good and full life anyway. And here is the thing. It is not only soldiers, not by a long way. Nearly every soul who walks into my room has come home from some private war the world never gave a name to and never handed out a single medal for. An illness, a terrible loss. A year which very nearly took them all the way under. And every last one of them has met the same strange lie waiting for them. The world says, well, it is finished now. Time to move along. But the body, you see, keeps its own quiet clock. Healing does not read the newspaper. And it does not care one bit what the calendar happens to say. So here is the part I would ask you to carry out with you on this bright day of surrender and joy. Healing does come. Slower than we want it to, and quieter than we would ever like, on its own stubborn and unhurried schedule, it does come. And the long, unglamorous work of the tending, for years, and sometimes for a whole lifetime, in exam rooms and in kitchens and in quiet rooms where one person just sits, faithfully, with another, well, it is not the small print of the victory. It may just be the truest part of the whole thing. So when somebody you love comes home from their war, whatever kind of war it happened to be, do not go handing them the calendar and pointing at the date. Do not tell them it is over and done. Sit yourself down beside them. Give the wound the time it needs. And keep on tending it, long, long after the parade has marched on by. Because it is how a war really and truly ends. Not on the loud, bright day of the surrender, but slowly and afterward in the long and the faithful care which nobody ever throws a party for. My patient is 99 years old, and somebody has been sitting with him, off and on, for 81 years. And it, too, is how the war was won. The front porch is open. Who in your life came home from a war, of whatever kind, and is still quietly being tended? Come and tell us. And if we get something wrong, tell us, and we will run the correction. The readers of the Cedar Valley News are gathering to share their stories and keep company with respect and no party lines. Come sit with us. I will put the link in the show notes. This is Aisha Khalid, your host for today's Quiet Echo. Thanks for listening. Quiet Echo is part of the fictional Cedar Valley News series, written by Evan Swenson, publisher, and Claude Marshall, AI developmental editor. The patient is fictional, but the history and the figures are real. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender, ending the Second World War. Because of the time difference, the news reached the United States on August 14th, and the formal surrender was signed on September 2nd aboard the USS Missouri, so the date marked as VJ Day varies by country. About 16.4 million Americans served in the war, and more than 405,000 died during it. According to United States Department of Veterans Affairs projections compiled by the National World War II Museum, the number of surviving American veterans of the war has fallen from more than 19,000 in 2023 to roughly 30,000 this year and continues to decline. Sources include the National World War II Museum and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
You've been listening to the Cedar Valley News Podcast, where small-town voices meet the headlines shaping our world. From faith and family to front porches and fields. We'll be back with more stories connecting real lives to real events. Until next time, keep your porch light on, your faith strong, and your heart open. This is Cedar Valley News.